Hello, everyone. Welcome back to MLS Moves. Please make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Guys, it's El Trafico week, final game of the season. It's been an interesting year. First time that either team has, I think, went to the third game, possibly doing a sweep, which is kind of crazy to think about. We have Andrew Hernandez, LA Galaxy fan, Eric from the Voice of Black and Gold, LAFC fan. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting game, especially because both of these teams are at the top of the table in the Western Conference. And whoever wins this game is most likely, I would say, going to end up finishing at the top of the Western Conference. We'll start with Andrew. How are you feeling about this game going into this weekend? And what do you like? What are your how do you feel about the Galaxy's chances, considering they haven't won against LAFC this year?
Yeah, what's up? Thanks so much for having me on. I'm feeling excited more than anything. I know the record isn't exactly in our favor. It is looking pretty bad if you take it at face value. But I think there's a lot of things also going into Galaxy's favor, so I'm excited to see what happens. We're definitely top right now, hoping to stick that way.
Eric, how are you feeling about the game going into this weekend?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's not the most confident I felt going into it, and it's kind of interesting. It is the first time the teams are number 1 and 2 going into this game, and it doesn't seem like it has as much buzz and excitement around it as it has in the past, which is kind of strange considering like where the teams are and the implications for the standings in the West at the end. I agree. I think whoever wins this game, if a team gets 3 points out of this game, I think they're going to win the Western Conference. And ultimately, it's probably going to mean a home playoff game. The sides rematch again in the playoffs, which seems to happen all the time as well. So,
Yeah, well, I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if you guys saw my thread, but I think that the league has done a piss poor job of promoting this game because this feels like, well, obviously the Zlatan Vela El Trafico games are just absolute classics, and they were crazy. And glad I got to witness those. But this is, like you said, the first time we have both of these teams in the first two positions in the Western Conference heading into the final El Trafico match of the season, and there's only it's kind of mismatched because there's teams that have 7 games left. There's some have 9 games left. There's some teams that have 6 games left. I think LAFC have maybe 1 or 2 games in hand over at the LA Galaxy, 2 games in hand. But we're getting down the final stretch of the season, and anything could happen in this game, which I think they should have done a better job promoting. I'm excited about this because of the implications this will have on the playoffs. And anything that can happen, or everything that can happen, especially like you said, Eric, of having the number 1 seed and home field advantage, which I think is very important, throughout the playoffs. Now, Andrew, why have the Galaxy struggled against LAFC this season, man? I mean, it feels like this is the best LA Galaxy team we have seen in a while. They spent a lot of money on Peck and obviously Paintsill. Why have they struggled this year against LAFC?
Yeah, LAFC have definitely had our number. It hasn't been so much fun watching and covering those games. But I think if you look at what's happened through each of them, the Galaxy have had chances. I think it's really only a couple of decisions that have made really a difference in this game. That first El Trafico at BMO, there was that penalty call, which was a little bit controversial, and that really ended up making the difference. You go to the second game at the Rose Bowl, there's another penalty. Maybe that one's a little bit more clear, but still that ended up making the difference. If a couple of things go differently, I think we're talking about a different storyline. Both of these teams going into it even, the Galaxy on top, LAFC with a couple of games in hand. Like you guys mentioned, it is definitely odd to see that there's not as much buzz, excitement about this game, especially it's a story. It feels like a storybook. You couldn't have written it any better. Both of these teams coming into it top 2, final time they're going to meet each other in the regular season. I don't know. I feel like the Galaxy have a lot going for them in coming into this match. So I'm expecting something different this time around. We have Dejan Jovalic as reportedly he's going to be available for this game. That's going to be big. We've been missing him for sure. So to have him back, to have Marco Royce now in here, it's another element that's going to, I don't know, it's going to make things really interesting to see. So I'm excited to see what this Galaxy team can do this time around. But sure, LAFC have had our number. We've definitely lost both times. There's no changing that. But I'm a lot more excited coming into this one.
Eric, what has happened to the Galaxy this year? This is the most talented LA Galaxy team we've seen in a while. LAFC team, I would say that this is just as talented as the teams we've seen in the years past. I don't think it's like there's a huge difference. How has the LAFC had their number this year so far?
I think part of it is Trundle's coaching strategy. We're a much more defensive-oriented team than we have been in the past. I think a lot of the other matchups, Gabriel Pec, when he came in, I think the earlier matchups, he was still getting adjusted to the team, and he wasn't, he seemed to really pick up after the last game we had. Before that, he was kind of quiet as he was getting adjusted to the league. So I think that was a big difference. The other one as well is I think Ilie Sanchez has been tasked to mark Riqui Puig, and I think he's been really effective. And generally when we play against them, Riqui Puig kind of has gotten taken out of the game, mostly by Ilie Sanchez. Murillo did help him on some doubles, but with him out, we'll see. The other wild card to me is Pantsil is out on accumulation. So I imagine Royce will slot in for Pantsil, but he offers a different skill set than he does. So how that's going to go, I'm not sure. And on our end, we have Giroud in right now, so we have a 9. We're not used to playing with a 9, and we're still trying to figure that out. So I think that's one of the reasons with this game that I think it's going to be an interesting one on our side, because our team is a little bit in flux right now with obviously like a major DP signing. And, Royce, on the other hand, seems to have fit in pretty quickly. At least the first game. I think maybe the second game wasn't as strong. So I think it's going to be a pretty classic derby, and it's going to be a dogfight as it usually is. I'm not sure if it's going to be as high scoring as it has in the past, and but it should be a fight.
Yeah, and I think that this is the best rivalry in MLS. I don't think it's frankly close to any other rivalry in the league. And I think what makes it special too is I don't think the league necessarily pushed it on us. I just think obviously being so close and the true hatred that these fan bases have for each other, you love to see it, right? Because it just makes the game so much more interesting. Now, just to get away from the game for a second, I want to ask you a little bit more about this rivalry because it is such a big deal. Now, I would never ask opposing fans to say a nice thing about the other fan base, but one thing I will ask you, it's a little bit of a different approach, right? And I'll start with Andrew. Why is this the best rivalry in MLS?
Well, I think you said it as you were bringing that up. Both teams, they're both from LA. Obviously, it's the noisy neighbors, each of them just bugging each other. And I think as a Galaxy fan, you have this idea that LAFC is sort of just coming out of nowhere. The league is sort of catered to them in certain ways, is the feeling that I get amongst the supporters. So you feel sort of wrong, like, hey, we were here first. Why aren't we getting the same type of love? So there's maybe some animosity that comes from that. And I think it's just the fans themselves. They've seemed to gotten into it, especially on social media. You'll see videos circulating of fights that have been going on. There's just something about having someone so close to you, rubbing elbows with someone you don't like, that it's like kindling for a fire. And it's been really great watching it burn.
Eric, why is this the best rivalry in MLS?
Man, I mean, we're both we're very passionate fan bases, I think, and it's animosity's one. I think there can be a little jealousy in there, I think, on the Galaxy side, and on our side, it's a little bit of a, hey, what's wrong with us? Generally it's like a lot of insults kind of got thrown around, and I know in the first couple of games there were some fairly violent incidences that happened between fans, and that's led things kind of where it is, and just a lot of trash talking at the end. But I think the rivalry gets heated up to like a point without boiling over. Luckily, we've never really seen it boil over. So I think on that side of it is pretty good. And, at the end of the day, we're all Dodgers fans and Lakers fans and, some Clippers fans too. So on that side, but I mean, the other thing, it's like, these are two stadiums and they're 7 miles from each other. And in American professional sports, this really doesn't happen. You look at, as I said, baseball, the Dodgers, our rivals, not the Angels in Orange County, because they play in different leagues. Our rivals are the Giants, 400 miles to the north, and that's the interesting thing with a lot of American sports is that, you tend to have teams in different conferences. We had the Rams and the Raiders, but they play in different conferences, so they weren't really like true rivals. Like the Raiders rivals are the Chiefs, and the Rams rivals were like the Cardinals and the 49ers, So MLS gives us the rivals right next door to each other in the same city. It gives us the house divided, which other things don't do. So I think that's really kind of where it comes from. And it's I enjoy it, and it's a great rivalry to have. All snark aside, it's we couldn't really ask for better rivals, honestly.
Well, I'm neutral, right? I like both these teams equally because I think they're both equally important to pushing the league forward.
Well, I'm sorry, Will. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. But like, you got to think it's important for both of these teams to have some success to help the league grow. I mean, it truly is. I like the analogy or the comparison of Manchester United and Man City and LAFC and LA Galaxy, the traditional winning club that has a pretty strong fan base, and then kind of the new kids on the block, LAFC, Man City, who win more recently, right? I think that's a pretty fair comparison to this rivalry as well, or these two teams. But I do know that the league is better when LAFC is good and when when LA Galaxy are good. And the crazy part is, like, we talked about earlier, it's been kind of like crickets. Like there's been no buzz about this game, which is crazy because they're both are the best they've been collectively since they've been in the league. These are the top two teams in the West, and two teams, maybe you guys will disagree on this part, but I'll say that they are two teams that could contend for the MLS Cup this season. And I feel like that is why you would want to promote this. Like from a marketing standpoint, saying, can LAFC sweep LA Galaxy? Can LA Galaxy pull one back on LAFC to solidify their first place standing in the Western Conference? I mean, you would think that this would be the biggest of them all, just because the ramifications and what this could happen leading into the playoffs. So I'm a little disappointed on that from that aspect. Hopefully everybody tunes in and watches this match. So going back to the game, right? I think, Eric, it's really hard to win 3 games in a row. It doesn't matter what sport it is. It doesn't matter, what the circumstances are. It's hard to win 3 in a row. So that's why if I had to pick, I would probably go more into the Galaxy's column. And they're a good team. It's just really hard to beat the same team 3 times in a row. It really is.
Well, I'll counter that by saying, Trundle is undefeated to Brian Schmetzer. That's 7 games straight without losing to him, and 5 of those are wins. So I do think it's possible. Some coaches just get other coaches' number. I mean, look at Columbus. Like Columbus has had our number, and it's just it's an interesting thing. And you look at before Trundle, they had Bradley's number at the same thing. I mean, this was a historically bad team back then. If you look at their whole history, I mean, I think the 5 years leading up to this probably could be looked at one of the weakest points for them. And but today it's an even strength team, and the results are lopsided. So I mean, is that just sports?
Andrew, to counter his point, though, Greg Vanney has beaten Steve Trundle 3 times, or I think 3 times since he's been the LA Galaxy coach. So he says Brian Schmetzer, hasn't beaten Steve Cherundolo, but Greg Vanney has beaten Steve Cherundolo before. So we have seen it. Do you think that it's going to be hard? I mean, how do you feel about, winning 3 in a row is really difficult in any sport, man. I just think that that's kind of a tall task.
Yeah, I definitely hate to see it happen, that's for sure. But the Galaxy do have some things this season that sort of lean more in their favor. First of all, we're playing at Dignity Health Sports Park. They've really made that place a fortress this year, undefeated in that stadium. So that's something definitely you want to have in your back pocket coming into that. You have your players, you want them to keep on defending their house, right? Also, they haven't lost 2 games in a row this season. Their longest losing streak is just 1, and they lost that game against St. Louis back at the beginning of the month. That really doesn't mean anything, but it does go to show that the Galaxy have that bounce back ability. And I think they're really, really, really going to want to bounce back, not undo those 2 losses, but sort of put a stop to that, leave it at 2, and end the regular season with a win against them. So you look at both of those things, being undefeated and having that ability to come back from losing. I think they're going to have the mentality that's really going to be important in this game.
Okay, so let me follow up and ask you this, because I want to talk a little bit to wrap up this game, and I want to ask a little bit about what you think your championship chances are for each of you and your teams. What is your score prediction for the third El Trafico match of 2024? What do you think the score is going to be?
It's been 2-1 every time. I want to say 2-1, but I think this time in the other direction for the Galaxy.
Who's going to be your breakout player? Is it going to be Riqui Puig? Is it going to be Gabriel Pec?
I think Peck is he scored in the last one. I think I love Peck. That he's such a great
He's
guy.
great.
Really, really fantastic on the pitch. So much fun to watch. It's just Joga Bonito personified. Really great to see it here in LA. So I think he's gonna want to ball out. I have a feeling he's gonna score. I think Puig will have a big game. I really hope he does, but he hasn't in the past 3 El Clasicos. He hasn't made a single chance. He's really been blank, so that might be tough with Marco Reus there next to him. There's definitely a possibility for that to change, but I'd look more at Reus and I'd look a little bit more at Peck in this game.
Eric, what's your predictions for the third El Trafico match of 2024?
Yeah, I mean this game has traditionally been a very high scoring game. You know, a lot of 4-3s, etc. But I think this one might be a little lower score as well. I think it could be a 1-0 or a 2-1. But to me, really, it's going to come down to if Giroud is able to put a goal in. One of the things we've struggled with is giving him service. We're not, before he came here, we were third from the bottom in completed crosses for teams. It's not our DNA to line it up on the wing and send them into the box. And so this is kind of a tricky thing for us. Our 9 is tend to be a false 9, or, most of the goals have come poaching, so I think this might be one where we put it on a set piece or something like that, or maybe Denis Bouanga gets another controversial penalty, and that's all he needs, because in a derby win, a controversial penalty is honestly like the greatest way to win. Like, you want the controversy on these. If I'm honest, like, I love a controversial win. Like, that's the best. So, as they say, o chorro é livre in Portuguese, to cry costs nothing, and that's, you love to rub it in, So I think it's going to be a low scoring game, and I think it's really all going to come down to who scores first. As I said in our chat, in our show, it's if Giroud gets the first goal, I think we're going to come away with this game. If we don't get the first goal and we have to chase, I think we're going to be in trouble, because we've had a lot of trouble playing from behind this year. It's just not the way Dolo Ball is set up.
I think that you guys are going to need both of your star players, which I know it sounds cliche, but I really believe this. Like Andrew said, Riqui Puig has been missing the last couple games, and I think that's been detrimental to them losing. I think they're going to have a big game from Riqui Puig. He's going to have to create some chances. He's going to have to be that integral cog in the machine that he is, touching the ball all game long. I think he still, if I'm not mistaken, I think he still has the most touches in the league. So he needs to create chances. And I think on the LAFC side, you got to depend on Denis Bouanga. When Denis Bouanga disappears and he doesn't score, LAFC, normally don't win. And I think that was a huge criticism in their last loss to Columbus, is he didn't do enough. Obviously, Giroud didn't do enough as well. But Denis Bouanga has to perform and show up if they want to win this game. They're relying on him. So it'll be interesting to see between Puig and Bouanga. Hopefully both of them show up, kind of like Vela and Zlatan did, right? Where we got those classic games where it was a duel of the greatest. But I think that those are the two players that have to show up. And obviously there's an X factor or a dark horse performer. Andrew talked about Marco Reus. I think he's going to be kind of a dark horse contributor. And Eric said Olivier Giroud. We'll see which older European player is able to shine through for each team. And it's going to be interesting to see what the final score is. Now, moving on, the last point, going into the playoffs, right? Because both of these teams have solidified their spot in the playoffs. They're both going to make it. We'll see who finishes at top. It's going to be interesting. I think that this game this week is going to tell us who will finish as the first place in the Western Conference. Andrew, going into heading into the playoffs or getting close to the playoffs, how do you feel about the LA Galaxy's chances of winning an MLS Cup this year? it's been a decade since they won in 2014 against the New England Revolution. And they've had some players, obviously, they've had a couple bumps in the road, but they've had some players. They just haven't been able to reach that big game again. How are you feeling going into this playoff cycle or coming up soon for the LA Galaxy's chance of winning an MLS Cup?
Yeah, I think it really does depend on the result of this next game. If we get that win, we go 7 points clear of LAFC with 2 games in hand. That's not enough to catch up. So that would lock down that first place for us. That would lock down that home game, crucially in that playoff. Like we mentioned, the Galaxy are undefeated at Dignity Health Sports Park, and that's going to be massive. If they really want to make a deep run, give themselves the best chance, they have to win that game. And they have to set themselves up to play at home in the playoffs. If they can't do that, then it gets a lot more difficult. All of their losses have been on the road. Traveling is hard on this team. That last game against St. Louis, where Marco Roy sort of struggled a little bit more, you saw the effect of the travel, of the heat even. There's so many just things that don't go your way when you're not at home, and the Galaxy really need all of them. It's going to be their first time back in the playoffs in a little bit, so they really need to win this game, give themselves the best chance. If they can do that, then I'm really, really excited for what the Galaxy can do in playoffs. I hesitate to say that they can win it, but I don't know. In the back of my mind, since last year, since Will Kuntz joined and he started making those signings, you saw a different direction. I remember thinking in the back of my head, what if? So I'm gonna say, what if? If we can get that win, I'm gonna let myself dream a little bit more. But if not, I might have to be a bit more pragmatic.
Yeah, we didn't even delve into the Will Kuntz connection too. The LFC, there's some bad blood there. But yeah, I would say that the Galaxy definitely have a good chance, as good of a chance as they've had in a while. Even with Zlatan being as good as he was, I don't think that he had the supporting cast around him to really truly compete for an MLS Cup. So I feel like this is definitely the Galaxy's best team that they've had since the Bruce Arena days, probably 2014 when they won. Eric, how are you feeling about LAFC heading into the playoffs? Obviously, they've been to back-to-back MLS Cup finals. They lost last year to the Columbus Crew, lost the League's Cup final to the Columbus Crew this past summer. How are you feeling about the LAFC's chances to making it to a third MLS Cup final and winning an MLS Cup final?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna break this down to start with making it to the final, because if there's one thing we have shown in the last 2 years, we're really good at making finals. So getting there is, I feel pretty confident that we can go through and we can take the West. Obviously, like, this game is going to be a huge step in that. And I do think that if we go to the playoffs, I don't think we played in Dignity in the playoffs ever before. And if we have to go in there, I don't hate our chances to pull it off. I think it'll be a good game. If there's one thing with the lack of hype on this game, maybe it's just going to build up for the playoffs, because I think the two teams are going to be on a collision course and it's inevitable. So getting to the final, that's a whole other mess. We're pretty traumatized by Columbus and Wilfred Nancy at this point. So we'll probably be cheering for a Miami. I think the Miami-Columbus game on the other side is going to be absolutely tasty football. And we'll see how that goes. If we're dreaming towards the final, I mean, a third cup final in 3 years, I mean, it's living the dream right there. But it would be nice to see him come through it. But in the meantime, we have a season to finish up. We have a derby to play, and as we always say in our show, like, you don't play derbies, you win derbies, and that's it. The guys are going on the field. It's not a regular game. It's a whole different thing. And so the normal league games kind of go out the window in these games, and it really just comes down to who can control their emotions and who can play with the intensity. And the last thing I really think on this game, I think kind of the key to this game, aside from the Stars playing, is going to be controlling the midfield. Our midfield has kind of struggled to control the ball, and when we have been winning, it's on the same side. They've had trouble controlling the midfield. So I think the midfield battle is really going to determine the direction this goes, to give the superstars the opportunity to put the game away. I also think Giroud and Jalen Neal is going to be a really, really interesting battle as well. I mean, Giroud's a big physical guy. Jalen Neal's up and coming, fast guy. He's the one player, like, I like seeing him on the national team, and I think he's got a great future ahead of him. So that other battle, those are kind of the battles I think are going to be super interesting to watch in this game. And I know a lot of neutrals are going to be on your show. So I think that's kind of the things to watch if you're going to be looking for some champagne in what's going to be a very emotionally heated game.
Yeah, I think the one concern I have about the Galaxy, and I think a lot of Galaxy fans would even agree with this, is their defense. Their back four is still a little suspect, right? They got a lot of age back there. Yoshida, I mean, I don't think Yoshida's bad, but I mean, he's relying on a 36-year-old defender, and then Jalen Neal's obviously very talented, but he obviously had the injuries earlier in the season, and he as I wouldn't say he struggled to find his form, but he's still gaining form and he's still trying to settle back in. So I think that makes it a little difficult. And I know that you guys signed the young Colombian center back. I don't know if they've fully integrated him in or if he's been playing, but I know he's talented.
Played a game. Yeah,
he's played a game.
He looked really, really great. Got injured at the end of that, but he's had a couple of weeks to recover. I don't think there was press availability today, and I don't know if anyone asked if he was fit. But he's had a couple of weeks to recover from ankle injury. So I would love if he's back. He looks really, really, really exciting, strong, really good in the air, which Jalen has sometimes struggled with being in the air. So you look at Giroud and Jalen back there. It looks like Giroud, he might have a chance to feast there if we give him maybe some Garces who might be able to hold him up a little bit stronger in the air. I would love to see that. I'm a really big fan of him, so definitely keep an eye out on him when he does come back. But you're right. Yeah, you have those veterans in the midfield, in the defense with Jalen Neal. It hasn't looked the strongest, but I would say to the Galaxy's credit, things have been getting better.
Yeah, and these are two giants that are going to be fighting it out. There's a lot of quality on both sides. I know you guys won't say that about the opposing team, but there's a lot of quality on both sides. It's going to be a great game. This is the best rivalry in the league, and it's going to be exciting to watch because there's just so much at stake. And here's a hot take I'll have, right? I truly believe this, okay? I believe whoever loses this game will represent the Western Conference in the final. Whoever loses this game will represent the Western Conference in the final. So if it's LAFC losing, they will be there. And if it's LA Galaxy losing, they will be there. That's just my prediction because I just find it hard to believe that if the Galaxy lose 3 in a row, they're going to lose 4 in a row. And I think the LAFC will have a chip on their shoulder if they lose at Dignity Health Sports Park. So I think that they will also come back with a vengeance. But yeah, this is going to be an exciting game. This has been a very civil conversation. Thank God, right? I didn't think it would be too out of control or anything like that. But it will be interesting to see what happens and see who prevails, right? I'm going to be doing a live stream watch along for this game, and I'm very excited and hope a lot of people join for that. And I will say my final score prediction. I don't think I've given my score prediction. I think, which kind of puts me in a box here because I said whoever loses is going to, make it to the Western Conference final. But I do think the Galaxy are probably going to win this game. I just think it's really hard to win 3 in a row. I would say the Galaxy will probably win 2-1. Gabriel Pec is an absolute demon. He's crazy good. I think he's probably will probably end up being sold for the most money of any MLS player in history. That's the kind of potential he has. And I think that the LAFC is still trying to figure some things out, and they've got a couple players they're trying to integrate in and trying to, like Giroud, who needs to play more consistently, especially with what they're paying him. He needs to be more consistent, and if he is, that will change the ball game and change the dynamic. But listen, I appreciate both of you coming on. Andrew, we'll start with you. Where can people follow you at on any social media or podcasts? Where can the good people find your work?
Yeah, you can find me. You can read my articles on Los Angeles Sports Nation. I'm providing coverage of the Galaxy from the press box there, so definitely check that out. I'm on Twitter at NGF Andrew, and you can find me on Instagram at Nuestra Galaxia Futbolera. We cover the Galaxy, some teams in Europe as well, Real Madrid, Fiorentina. So check me out, and hopefully we can have some fun together.
Eric, where can the fans follow your work at, and where can they listen to your podcast at?
Yeah, it's Eric VOBG, just like on the screen. And our podcast is The Voices of Black and Gold, which is live every Monday at 7 p.m.
Boys, I appreciate it. Hopefully it's a great game. Obviously you guys have a idea of how you want to see it play out, but hopefully it's just a good game and everybody enjoys it and we have fun and it's another classic game to remember. Until next time.
Gold.
I can't confirm or deny that. Until next time, guys, I will see you all soon.